Clap your hands. All right, cool. The reason why I had Jaden do that is because I'm a cripple, clearly. I know. First it's the stage, now it's this. No, I was at CrossFit, and I was doing dumbbell presses, and a dumbbell fell off of the bench. I let it go, and there was already a dumbbell on the floor, and it didn't break it, but it pinched it, and it bled all over everywhere. And it was really gross and really nasty, and Macy helped me fix it. So I'm still here. I didn't die. I didn't bleed out. So it cut. Macy was like, I think it did hit a vein. I'm like, oh, that's not what I want to hear. But anyway. Hey, I got a really special night. It's going to be really fun tonight. I'm excited. I've got a lot to go through. So just go ahead. If everybody could just put your seatbelts on. Click it. Make sure you click it or tick it now, okay? That's the way it goes. Who's driving in here? Who's learning to drive? Yeah, who's in that spot? Driver's ed, all that good stuff. Yeah, when you guys get your driver's license, just let me know so I can stay off the road. Just let me know, and I'll be sure to just keep my car parked. It's rusted out anyway. It probably won't get me much longer, so that's fine. We're going to be in a couple of different passages. We're going to be in Psalms, and we are going to be in 2 Samuel. And we're going to be taking a look at a guy named David. But before we do that, I kind of have a little bit of a story. Of course, I've got stories. It's actually not even a story. It's more of a quote. It's October. Spooky season, right? Who decorates, like, orange and black and all that stuff? All right, you weirdos, I'll pray for you. No, I'm joking. Fall just means pumpkins and leaves and Thanksgiving. That's in, and if you want to dress up, all right, cool. But it's undeniable that whether or not, I'm not trying to get into a debate about Halloween or not and that kind of stuff. Leave it up to your parents. Whatever they say, that's what you go with, okay? But it's undeniable the fact that who has a streaming service or multiple streaming services at home, whether it's, Amazon or Netflix or even Disney, right? Everyone around this time, every streaming service is putting out their best horror collections that you can watch, right? Now, I don't know how you feel about horror movies. Maybe you like them. Maybe you don't go anywhere near them, right? I think that we can all agree that most of them are pretty filthy regardless of the violence, right? But regardless, we're inundated with this thing of horror and terror and being frightened. I don't know why anyone would be possessed to go to a haunted house, right? It's bad enough to watch it on a screen. I don't need it coming at me. I will punch somebody. Maybe not now, but I will punch somebody later, right? Like, I don't understand that. But I think we can agree that one of the scariest things, whether it's a book or whether it's a haunted house or whether it's a movie or something like that, or even just thoughts that we have, one of the most terrifying things that we can experience in any sort of those mediums or anything like that is actually what you can't see. And horror directors or writers or people who do TV shows and different things like that, they purposely will build suspense, and sometimes they won't even show who the antagonist is at all. And that can actually be some of the most scary things that we see and experience. I don't know if you guys know of the author Stephen King, but he says this. He says there are 3 types of horror. He says there's the gross out. That's when the lights go out and something green and slimy splatters on your arm. Pretty gross, right? Just disgusting. Just disgusting for disgusting's sake. He says there's the horror. That's when the lights go out and something with claws grabs your arm. I'm not trying to give you guys nightmares. I'm just saying this is how he defines it. He says the last and the worst one is terror. Everybody say, ooh. He says it's when the lights go out and you feel something behind you, you hear it, you can feel its breath on your ear, but when you turn around, there's nothing there. Some of you guys who come to Alien, it's always fun to just freak you out just a little bit. I mean, come on, it's a big building. Most of you guys aren't used to it. I've come here before in the middle of the night before, and It's a little weird, but it's not crazy, but it's fun to watch you guys. I mean, I get some of you guys really badly. Yeah, I do that. But tonight, I want to reveal a monster and break down something that we all see as terrifying, but we actually can't see it at all. It's a monster that's destroying people from the inside out. It's one that many, even inside of the church, refuse to acknowledge as even being a real thing. Tonight, I want to talk about the scary monsters. If you could show look at how scary. Everybody say, oh. I want to talk about scary monsters. And tonight specifically, I want to talk about the scary monsters that surround mental health. Did you feel everybody just like, uh-oh? And I want to just give a precursor here. You might not agree with everything I say. And some of the things I say might come across as harsh. I hope you hear my heart in this. I hope you hear what I'm saying and not what I'm not saying. And if you have any questions, as always, everybody knows in this room, you can always come to me with stuff. I get that mental health is a sensitive issue. I get that some people are dealing with mental health issues. I get that some people have lost people to mental health issues. I'm not trying to make light of anything. If it comes across that way, my sincerest apologies. But, because there always is a but, I'm also not going to be watering down the Word of God. And what I've been studying over these last couple of weeks and the things that I've been looking at, I believe are truly from His Word. And I've ran it by a couple pastors, and they said it was good, so I'm joking. I think one of the most famous Bible characters that we could see is David, right? And David, if you've ever read any Psalms or read his story at all, he dealt with lots of mental health issues before we even had a thing called mental health, right? I want to read two passages, and I want to kind of compare them. We'll go back and forth between them. I hope you can bear with me. It is going to be a lot of reading tonight, but hopefully we can get through it, and that's why I had you put your seatbelts on anyway, so you can't go anywhere. See, David is the same character in both, but they're two entirely different situations and circumstances and outcomes. And so hopefully by the end, you can have an understanding. I'm going to go ahead and give you this. You can have an understanding of how to identify, how to navigate, and how to find freedom from these vicious enemies of depression, anxiety, fear, and despair. These are all things that David went through, and so hopefully you can be able to hear what I'm saying. So in Psalm 69, verses 1 through 4, this is what it says in the Word of God. It says, God, my God, come and save me. This is actually, I'm just going to even stop it here. This is actually reminiscent of what Jesus says on the cross. God, why are you forsaking me? Can you come save me, right? This is kind of a similar passage. It's similar to Psalm 22, which is actually where the direct quote that Jesus says as he's on the cross. So that's kind of cool when you can see scripture supporting scripture. It says, these floods of trouble have risen higher and higher. The water is up to my neck. I'm sinking into the mud with no place to stand, and I'm about to drown in this storm. Who's ever felt that before? Come on, I think we've all been in situations and circumstances like this. He says, I'm weary, I'm exhausted from weeping, my throat is dry, my voice is gone, my eyes are swollen with sorrow, and I'm waiting for you, God, to come through for me. Everybody say, come through for me. I can't even count all of those who hate me for no reason. David's really laying everything out. He says, many men, many influential men want me silenced. Yet I've done nothing. Everybody say nothing. I've done nothing against them. Must I restore what I never took away? You can see David is obviously in some despair here. He's in distress, right? And he is looking at all of the situations. And from everything that we can read, it is not his fault he's going through what he's going through. He is in the middle of a mental health crisis, or what we would see as a mental health crisis in 2023. And here he is going, this is not my fault. Why am I dealing with this? God, would you please come save me? I don't know if you've ever been there like I've been there, but this is very, very relatable to me. And we see that. I want to read and use the other passage that we're going to use tonight in 2 Samuel. Again, like I said, there's going to be a little bit of reading. And I want to look at this in Psalm 69 and look at it from 2 Samuel as well. It's a totally different situation. It's the same character. It's David. And David goes on to make some mistakes as he serves as king, like any of us would, right? Let's be real. David was a man after God's own heart, but he wasn't sinless. Right? There's only one who is sinless, and that's Jesus. But one of, if not one of the most disgraceful mistakes came in the story of David and Bathsheba. Oh yeah, we're going there. You see, David was on top of, was outside in his courtyard, outside, in his kingdom. And he looked, and back then they used to have bathtubs on like the roofs because you had to have some discretion somewhere, right? You're not going to get it in a shack. And so they would have it up there, and he actually sees this woman taking a bath, which is creepy, just let's be real. And he sees her, and he goes, oh, she's pretty. Oh, I like her. The only problem is that she was already married. But that's not a problem when you're the king. Because what David ended up doing is he called her husband and said, hey, I really see a lot of really good leadership in you. And we have this battle that we're going to go in that we're probably going to lose. He didn't tell him that. But he said, I want you to be on the front lines of it. He says, all right. The king picked me. He goes out. He gets murked. And David takes this now widowed woman and he marries her and he makes her his new wife. And we can get into the nitty-gritty of Scripture. There are some interpretations that say that it was a little more not consensual in the way that he pursued her and the way that she saw that. Again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I know for sure what was going on. There just are some interpretations in that way. So obviously, this is a very serious mistake. That's the bottom line of what I want you to get. So there's a prophet that God sends called Nathan. Where's Nate at? Come on. There he is. What up, Nate? Nathan, right? And the prophet Nathan was sent by God to go confront David about this. And this is what happens in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. It says, so the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to tell David this story. I want you to hear this story. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich and one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle. The poor man owned nothing but one little lamb that he bought. He raised the lamb and he grew it up with his own children. It ate from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. I don't know why you would let a lamb do that, but people are weird with their dogs, so I get it, I guess. He cuddled it in his arms like a baby daughter. One day, a guest arrived at the home of the rich man, but instead of killing an animal from his own flock or herd, he took the poor man's lamb, he killed it, and prepared it for his guest. Everybody say, oh, snap. David was furious. Talk about irony. David gets so angry, and he says, as surely as the Lord lives, any man who would do such a thing deserves to die. And Nathan's like, oh, really? oh, really? He says he must repay 4 lambs to the poor man and for the one he stole and for having no pity. And then Nathan said to David, you are that man. The Lord God, the God of Israel says, I anointed you king and saved you from the power of Saul. You see, Saul was the king before David, and he was trying to go after him. There were so many times where he was trying to kill David. And David had the opportunity to kill Saul, but he didn't because he said, I'm not going to touch what the Lord has anointed, right? So this is where David was, and now here he is, and he's doing just as despicable and diabolical things in his kingdom as Saul was doing in his. He says, I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdom of Israel and Judah. And if that had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. David had received all of this stuff, and God says, I would have given you even more. But because of you've done this, this thing is going to happen. The first thing, if you're taking notes, tonight's message is obviously titled Scary Monsters. Rah, right? But the first thing that we have to understand and do is that we have to process our mental health. We have to process the emotions that we feel. We have to process the things that we are experiencing, because if you look at Psalm 69 and then you see this story in 2 Samuel, one is completely unfair to David. And he's in a mental distress because of what's happening to him, right? But then you have this other situation where it's a lot of probably the same emotions that he's feeling, a lot of the same distress. He was so angered at this thing that Nathan had told him, the story that he told him. Yet it wasn't a mental health crisis. It was him facing the consequences of his own actions. We have to process it because some issues are not on you. And those are real, and those are terrible. And I, as your youth pastor, and I know your youth leaders, we want to be there for you. We want to help you navigate that. We want to pray for you. We want to be there. But guess what? There are some things that you guys and my generation as well are calling mental health issues that are really just the consequences that we don't want to face too. I told you might not like this message. I'm sorry. Don't hate me. Same emotions, same frustrations, same anger, same despair, same feelings, totally different. One is completely understandable and justified, and you can see, hey man, you are going through a mental health crisis right now. And then there's one that's like, hey, I know it feels the same, and I know you might want to call it a mental health issue, but let me just tell you, this actually ain't an issue. It's just you facing the consequences of your own actions. There are so many people who are looking to navigate mental health issues. And like I said, some of the mental health things that you are having to deal with, man, they're real, right? If you have experienced any amount of trauma, that causes real damage. Like what I said at the beginning, there are far too many pastors, there are far too many churches that would like to say you didn't pray hard enough, that you did something, right? They hold this very old school view of the way that we see mental health issues. And if you struggle, then man, you just got to pray harder. And if you did this, well, maybe you just deserve it, right? There are some things that happen to you and that you walk through that you should never have to. And let me tell you, if nobody else has said this, I want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you have to navigate it. I'm sorry that you have to deal with it. I'm sorry that you were left with that. But on the other side, some of the things that our generations are trying to pass on as mental health issues are actually just the unwillingness that we have to accept the consequences of our own actions. Not everything can be a mental health crisis, I'm sorry. And the minute that you start to hold on to it, the minute that you say that like, hey man, this is, I'm not saying that these consequences don't hurt us. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that you should just take every single consequence with a smile on your face and be happy about it. I'm not saying that at all. I get it. Who's been grounded in here? Come on. You are. No, I'm joking. I have too. It sucks. It doesn't feel good. I'm not saying that the consequences aren't bad, and I'm not saying that that's not hard to deal with and navigate in and of itself. I'm just saying we can't claim everything as a mental health issue. We have to be able to process it. We have to be able to navigate it. We have to be able to understand it. And if that means talking to a pastor, talk to a pastor. If that means talking to a therapist, talk to a therapist. Figure out what's real and what's not so that you can get to the root of the actual issues that you're facing. Because if you look at everything through that lens of, well, I just have this mental health problem, then you are going to start to adopt a victim mentality. And everything around you is going to be circled and navigated around, well, I just have this. I just have depression. I just have anxiety. This is just how this is going to be. What I'm saying in this point is that we have to process the pain and we have to be able to process it with the guidance of the Holy Spirit. Let me tell you, invite the Holy Spirit into this processing, and you'll be so much better off. Because he is the comforter. He's the interpreter. He's the one who can actually be able to look at this, and through the Holy Spirit, he can say, hey, this is what I'm wanting you to do. This is what the Lord is speaking. This is what I want you to know. We can actually understand the difference if we rely on the Holy Spirit more than we rely on our diagnosis. I'm not saying that those things aren't real. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I think too often our generation is so quick to attach our mental health to our identity. So quick to take that on. And let me tell you, whether it's self-imposed or whether it's a consequence of your own actions, regardless, it is not your identity to keep. David, a man after God's own heart, in both of these situations, neither one of these became his identity. The enemy would love nothing more than to rob you of your very identity through what other people would say as a mental health crisis. And he would love to confuse what that even is so that everything becomes mental health and you actually don't get the help that you need. You understanding what I'm saying? Cool. I want to show a video, and this is where I said, please give me some grace here. I just think it's funny, to be honest. I want to preface it by saying it's going to come across that I'm making fun of somebody. Just saying. It's not one of you guys. Don't worry. I'm not like, it's him. No, I'm joking. But this is actually something I found on TikTok. It went viral last year, so maybe you've seen it. It's a lady who is dealing with a symptom of her mental health diagnosis, but she's claiming it more than what it is. So I'll come on the back end of it, and I'll kind of talk that through, but I want you to just watch it. We need a laugh, right? I'm kind of getting a little intense, right? All right, can we show that video, please? This girl was in tears, right? It's a very real thing to her, right? And it's very funny. That guy's hilarious, his accent and everything, man. It's so funny. But I think it's a great illustration of what it's like to not process this. Time blindness is a very real side effect of having ADHD, okay? But she had not processed everything in a correct way, and so now she was seeking accommodations for a side effect on an issue that is very real, but she wasn't actually able to deal with the real issue. And again, this is where I say, give me some grace on this. In my opinion, mental health is not a handicap on you. It's up to you. It's harder to it makes harder to navigate things. But if you can have a proper processing, you're able to say, in this situation, I know that I have ADHD, and I know that I suffer from time blindness. And I know that I need to set up things in such a way so that I can still be successful despite what I'm going through. Not to claim that as an identity and then run with it and ask, hey, is it okay if I'm late to my college classes or I'm late to this thing? I think in this case, she was applying for a job, but it was on something of, I think it was like an airline, where she literally, like, if you're late, then you're not getting people to the places they need to be on time. Do you understand what I'm saying there? It comes across like I'm making fun of it, and I guess there might be a baseline that it is funny, right? But I hope you hear my heart in this. This is the product of what happens when you can't process effectively, right? Are we on the same page? Are we clear? If you have issues with me, come talk to me after. Because I was wrestling with that. I'm like, I think I should show it. I don't know. Anyway, let's keep going. 2 Samuel 12, 18 through 23. This is what happened after. So Nathan goes on to tell David, hey, you and Bathsheba are going to have a child. You're going to have a baby, but the Lord isn't going to let it live. And I know that seems like, what? That doesn't seem like God at all. The Old Testament, there's a lot of nuance into why God would pronounce a judgment like that. If you have some questions, come talk to me. I'd love to explain it to you. There's a lot that goes into it. I was having to do a lot of research even to figure out what this meant. And so if you have some questions about any of that stuff, come talk to me. Bottom line is, this judgment was given. David knew, though, that through prayer and petition, right, that you can actually change the mind and change the heart of God. We see this in Abraham, right? Abraham, when God was going to destroy the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And he was going to destroy the city. Abraham said, hey, if I can find like 50 people, he's like, yeah, I won't destroy it. All right, can I find 40 people? He said, yeah, I won't destroy it. Can I find 20 people? Yeah, I won't. Like, he goes all the way. He's negotiating, in a sense, praying through, talking about, really changing where God was at. We have the power to petition in that way. That's the power of prayer, right? So David is praying and seeking the Lord very, very intensely. It says this in verse 18. Then on that seventh day, the child died. David's advisors were afraid to tell him. He wouldn't listen to reason when the child was ill. They said, what drastic thing will he do when we tell him the child was dead? They were worried. He's so distraught, right? He's so distraught that they were like, I don't know what he's going to do when we tell him. When David saw them whispering, he realized what had happened. And he asked them, is the child dead? And they said, yes, he is dead. Then David got up from the ground. He washed himself. He put on lotions and he changed his clothes. He went to the tabernacle and he went to worship the Lord. After that, he returned to the palace and was served food and ate. See, he was in the middle of prayer and fasting in that time. His advisors were amazed. We don't understand you. While the child was still living, you wept and you refused to eat. But now that the child is dead, you have stopped your mourning and are eating again. David replied, I fasted and wept while the child was alive. For I said, perhaps the Lord will be gracious and let this child live. But why should I fast when he is dead? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him one day, but he cannot return to me. David had an understanding that the way that the Lord operated, especially in the Old Testament with the holiness and the law and all of that stuff, he knew that this action that God had pronounced, which we see as 2023, is like, oh, why would God ever do that, right? Like, that just doesn't seem like him. David even had an understanding that what the Lord had pronounced as judgment upon him through the death of this baby, that was justified. He realized that. He said, I fasted and I prayed because I knew I could perhaps change the Lord and he would have mercy on me, right? But let me tell you, the important thing that we can get from this that doesn't make sense in our 2023 context is the fact that the Lord was faithful. He spoke a word through Nathan that something was going to happen, and it did. So in that moment, David gets up and just goes about and goes back to the tabernacle to go worship because he knows in that moment the Lord is trustworthy and the Lord is true to his word. It might not feel good, but this was the consequence that I had to deal with, right? And so I think as we're talking through this thing of our mental health and the issues and the circumstances that we see, the second thing is this, if you're taking notes. Pray for a move. Pray for a move, but prepare to move on. Pray for a move, but prepare to move on. You see, David was distraught at the thought of losing his son. Again, one of these things that we can identify as a very real mental health crisis, even though it's a consequence of the things that he's dealing. That feeling and those emotions of a father losing his son is a terrible thing that he's going to have to go through. He's not in a good place. He's praying, he's fasting, he's staying up all hours of the night. Yet when the news broke that he had lost his son, David simply got up and went to go prepare to worship God. You see, in losing his child, David was actually beginning to seek the Lord in a way that he had done when he was younger that even got him to the spot of being a king in the first place. He could move on and he could pursue the Lord with a newfound understanding of who God was. Might not feel good all the time, but that was how it was going to be. In the same way that David prayed to God to change his mind about his son, we can pray for a God to move in our mental health crisis. We can pray for God to move and take away our pain and our anxiety and our chronic illnesses and our depressions and all of those things. And guess what? I believe he can. But it's that whole concept that we see from Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? When they were about to be thrown in the fiery furnace. 3 guys. They get thrown in there. Nebuchadnezzar's like, hey, I'm going to throw you in there. And they are literally about to be thrown into this fire where they're easily going to die. And they say, you know what? We believe that the Lord is going to save us. Spoiler alert, he did. But they said, as they were about to go into the flames, they said, even if he doesn't, we're still going to worship. We're still going to pray. You're not going to break us just because he saves us or not. I think we need to be prepared for God to work a miracle in our life when it comes to the grief and the stress and the pains that we feel. But we also have to understand that sometimes as we pray these things, God's answer is actually no. Ouch. Which again seems so confusing. Why would God want me to have a depression? Why would God want me to have anxiety? Why would he want me to have a chronic illness? Why would he want me to have something that causes a manic or causes a bipolar disorder? Why would he allow something like that? And to be honest, I don't have a good answer. It goes back to somebody that asked about healing just a few weeks ago. Maybe it was a Sunday or a Wednesday. I don't really remember. I don't know why God doesn't heal. I don't know why God doesn't immediately step in and take away those things. But I know that in those moments where the response is no, in those moments we can trust in the faithfulness and the trustworthiness. You see, God had pronounced a judgment upon David that he deserved. David goes and prays, and he seeks the Lord in this moment. And the Lord's answer in that situation was no. So David gets up, he goes, changes clothes, and prepares to go worship. But he has a newfound, it wasn't a loss because he had a newfound appreciation and a newfound trust in the Lord, even in the midst of everything that was going on. He was able to see a new layer of God's trustworthiness and his faithfulness. You see, what Nathan said God would do, God did. And that doesn't mean that God's not good. It doesn't mean that he doesn't care. And it doesn't mean that he eventually won't take away those things that you struggle with. I want to let you know this. It is okay. You can love Jesus and you can take medicine. There's not enough people saying that right now. There are people who would say that if you take any sort of medication, then that is your unfaithfulness and your untrust, your distrust of God. You don't trust God enough. No. I just function better and I can actually put my trust in God when I'm in my right mind and in my right standing. And some people will be on medication for a very extended time. Some people will be on medication for a short amount of time. I need you to hear from a pastor, from somebody from this church. It is okay to have your medicine and have Jesus. Don't abuse your medicine. I have to put that disclaimer in there because some people like to do that. It's okay. You can take medicine and still have faith in Jesus. You can even take your medications and still believe that God is going to heal you. You taking medication is not you not trusting God for a miracle. And you're like, I'm not on medication. Guess what? You can have Jesus and a therapist too. You can go find a counselor. You can go find somebody to talk to. You can find professional help and sit on one of those couches with the headrest and go, I don't know why this happened. You can do all of that. That's great. That's how you know it's getting serious, right? No. I'm going to be transparent, and I hope that my staff is okay with this. If they're not, I'll apologize. We have a program that we're involved in at our church where every staff member has and I don't know who signed up and who's not, every staff member at our church has an opportunity to be with the therapist and be with the counselor. And I'm not going to tell you who, and I'm not going to say everybody's doing it because I don't know everybody's business, but I know that there are people on our church staff, your pastors, who are taking advantage of this. So guess what? It's okay. If somebody wants to come and tell you that you're not trusting Jesus because you're going to a counselor, somebody wants to tell you that your medication is you distrusting the Lord, you send them to me. I'll be nice, I promise. I don't know if I've shared this story before, but obviously it's very relevant. I had my first panic attack when I was a senior in college. That's not the time you normally get those. 22 years old. Let me tell you, 22 years old, first panic attack as a senior in high school. I remember it like it was yesterday. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had nothing to do. And I felt like I was going to die. If you've ever had anxiety or a panic attack before, you feel like, especially the first one where you don't know about it, you feel like you're going to die. I'm like, my heart is stopping. I think I'm having a heart attack. I need a Dr. Pepper really bad. Hey, there's a video of a girl. Jesse just sent it to me. Pastor Jesse just sent it. There's a 103-year-old lady. And there's a literal interview with her, and she's like, hey, listen, I love my Dr. Pepper. I drink 3 of them a day. My doctors tell me that it ain't good, but they keep dying, and I don't. So I'm just believing and trusting that's going to be me, okay? And in the meantime, I'll do CrossFit. Break my fingers. I had my first panic attack when I was at Evangel. It was like a Thursday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't even have anything. I didn't have homework assignments. I was supposed to enjoy my weekend. I didn't have an assignment ready to go. I didn't have anything. And all of a sudden, this fear just came and hit me. And I felt like I was going to die. And it hit me once a week for probably 3 or 4 weeks straight. There were some times where it was a couple of times a week. There were some times, like at least once a week. For the first time in my life, I had to pull a friend in. I was in an intramural basketball game. And I just couldn't get in control. And I pulled my friend over, and he goes, are you okay? I said, I'm not. He goes, you need to go. Go back to the dorm. I left a basketball game in the middle of the game. Like, the weirdest thing, especially for a 22-year-old at my first time. And I'm going to be honest with you. I know I've been honest about this fact before. I still have panic attacks. I had Macy pray for me right before I came up here because I felt one coming on tonight. I still believe God will heal me. I still believe he can take it. I'm not on medication. I'm open to it if I need to. I'm still looking for a complete healing. I'm still looking for all of these things. I'm doing my own work. You got to do your own work. You got to get in the Word. Come on. If you're not in your Word and you're struggling with anxiety, try that before you try medication, right? But listen, I want you to know this as a leader here. I am totally content if this is my struggle. I'm totally content. I got some exercises, and I got some prayers, and I got some people who care about me, and I'm going to be okay. And I say that because I want you to know it is okay if the answer is no. It's okay if God says, because you don't know the story. I know I share about my anxiety a lot. Hopefully it relates. I say it because I want you to know this is a safe spot for us. And if it's not, we need to create one very, very fast. And if you're the reason, fix it. Last bit of scripture. I know, there's a lot. You're like, more? This is actually probably some of the most important pieces. Because in that Psalm 69, it's a long one, but towards the end of it, in Psalm 69, 29 through 33, it says, I am burdened and broken by this pain. When your miracle rescue comes to me, it will lift me to the highest place. Then my song will be a burst of praise to you. My glory shouts will make your fame even more glorious than all who hear my praises. For I know Yahweh, that's our God. I know Yahweh, that my praises mean more to you than all of my gifts and my sacrifices. All who seek you will see God do this for them, and they'll overflow with gladness. Let this revive your hearts, all you lovers of God. For Yahweh does listen to the poor and needy and will not abandon his prisoners of love. 3, if you're taking notes. You got to praise. You got to praise even when it doesn't make sense. Because I guarantee you that if you can learn how to praise even in the midst of your pain, that will speak so loud to this culture that is got so much trauma and so much pain and so much heartache and so much mental health crisis, and they don't know what to do with it. And so if you, as you battle it or as you deal with it or as you walk it out, if you can learn how to praise in those moments, they will know what to do as well. Come on, man. We got to learn how to praise in the middle of our pain. You see, David is clear. Even in my darkest moments, I'm going to keep God at the center of everything I do because I know that eventually he'll elevate me to a higher place. Think of Jesus. Humiliated, broken, on the cross, seemingly defeated, but God elevated him in his resurrection, and now his name is above all names. Jesus loves you. Jesus cares about you, and Jesus is still alive. If we can learn how to praise even in the midst of our struggle, we will begin to see the testimony that we can live out to others. A lot of people are looking for a testimony. Maybe it's not a word that you say, but maybe it's the life that you live. Maybe it's not a sermon that you preach, but maybe it's the way that you navigate your mental health issue. Maybe it's not the way that you are able to share and communicate a good gospel message, but maybe it's the way that you walk into your therapist's appointment. Maybe it's the way that you take your medication in a way that honors the Lord and doesn't abuse it, right? Listen. We've done some studies, and I've told some of you guys this on Sundays, like we have got to change the way that we think about what people are looking for. Because guess what? There's a whole people out there that aren't in church, and they don't care to be. So we gotta get creative with how we even do this thing, right? The praise that you give can be the very thing that God uses to show others that you can have joy and freedom in your struggle with your mental health. I mean, after all, like I think of this, like in the pandemic, could you imagine going through any of that without Jesus? All of the isolation, all of the loneliness, all of the depression, all of the anxiety and worry about the future. Some of you guys, some of the youth leaders and stuff missed graduations. Some of you guys had dances and proms and different things that you guys didn't get a chance to go to. I mean, could you imagine dealing with that and having nowhere to put your trust and your faith in? And you're just on your own? Come on, man. If you have friends who are struggling with this and you're also struggling with it, you don't need to just sit and trauma dump on each other. Uh-oh, sorry. Sorry, we have Jesus. We don't need to trauma dump when you have Jesus. I'm not saying don't process it. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying don't navigate it. But let's not trauma dump with each other. Let's not try to out crazy each other. Oh, yeah? You got anxiety? I got depression. Oh, you got depression? I got PTSD. Oh, you got PTSD? I'm not making light of it. I'm just saying we try to do that. It's the same thing with busyness. How busy are you today? Oh, no, I got this schedule and this schedule. And, oh, man, I got this and this and this. Oh, I got this. And then somebody else comes and like, I'm busier than all the others. It's crazy, right? Let's not do that. We have Jesus. Hey, we have the answer. We have the answer. Again, like I said, it might not be a complete healing, but man, we got the answer for it. Come on. Don't allow whatever you're struggling with to steal your praise. Don't ever allow that. I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do. But I'm saying this is what we have to be able to do. If the worship team wants to come up, we can do that. We might go over just a little bit, but that's okay. Maybe we can like go into a bridge or something. And I don't know. You can figure it out. Jonah's the man. I was reading this because I heard it from somebody. Let me just all you high school students, you're about to start research papers in the next year or two. Or maybe you have one like due pretty soon for like seniors or whatever. Or maybe you're going to college. Let me tell you, anything that you hear, you should probably verify, right? So I was listening to this message and I heard this thing. We'll talk after. But I heard this message and I heard this guy say this thing and I'm about to share it. And I was like, I want to make sure that that's true. I could come up here and speak anything, okay? I have the microphone and you don't. So, like, I could say anything. You need to verify it, okay? I'm going to try to tell the truth the most of the time, okay? Just let me say that. But anyway, there was this pastor, and he was talking about mental health and comparing it and all this stuff. And I looked it up, and it was actually crazier than what I thought. He said that there was a study done that said the average person today carries more mental health struggles and issues than a psych patient in the 1950s. Like people they would put in straitjackets. And I was like, that's crazy. And so I go to look it up, and it got even crazier because guess what? The study that he was referencing was done in the 80s and 90s and not published until 2000. So you can guess where we're at from 2000 to 2023. They published this study, and they said that anxiety had increased so much that the typical school children in the 1980s reported more anxiety than the child psychiatric patients did in the 1950s. The 1980s, where they were still shoving kids into lockers. Like, it breaks my heart that in 2023 we look at something that was done in the 80s and we see and we go, oh man, it's so much worse now. Why? There's a mental health crisis in our country and around the world. And I'm not saying I have all the answers. And I'm not saying that I know every issue and every problem that we have and I know how to solve it and I know when we can do it. But guess what? I do know somebody who can restore whole people. I do know people who can take broken things and make them whole again. I do know somebody who went and died on a cross and took on every amount of guilt and shame and heartache and pain and depression and anxiety and PTSD and depression. And I think I said depression twice. Bipolar. I don't care, man. I know a guy who took all of that on the cross. He said, I'll take it. On a maybe that you would accept him. So tonight I have a very, very simple call. With every head bowed and every eye closed. Two very simple things. One, if you're struggling with any sort of mental health issue, anything, and there's a whole spectrum. So you could be like, man, my heart kind of flutters when I take a test, all the way down to like, I have panic attacks every single day. Man, I don't care. I'm not judging you. This is not the place where I get to look at you and go, you have trauma and you don't, and you're legit and you're not. I'm not saying that. This is between you and the Lord. Tonight, if you are struggling with any sort of mental health issue at all, I want to just pray for you. If you don't know where to turn, I want to pray for you. If you need to get introduced to the best doctor that I know, his name is Jesus, and he wants a relationship with you. So tonight, very simply, if you're struggling with a mental health problem, if you are dealing with trauma, if you're dealing with something right now, I want you to just raise your hand. I want you to raise your hand. I want you to be bold. I want you to be honest. Nobody's looking around. Come on, I see those hands. Come on. I see them. Keep them up. Keep them up. Nobody's looking around. Just me, actually. I don't want to lie to you. Mental health, come on. Struggling with something. Thank you, Jesus. I want to pray for you. Thank you. You can put your hands down. If you have never had a